So, talking about both the Matt Hardy show and the Eric Bischoff show, what is the difference in preparation, or is it similar to how you prepare to do both shows?
Nope, totally different. Totally different. See, there's a number right there.
You get that one though, because I caught you a little off guard with the question.
Hardy's show is significant amounts of preparation. I was just prepping before I got on here with you because we're going to tape tonight. I use a lot of my TV preparation with Matt Hardy. So my mentor in the industry is, if you're a sports fan, you know this name. If you're like an actual sports fan, Ian Eagle, who's
absolutely
prolific play-by-play guy. He's my mentor. And the biggest piece of advice I learned from him when I was 15 years old was pre-production is production. The amount of work you put in ahead of time is going to ultimately reflect in your product. So with Hardy, I have a list of topics that I've planned out throughout the year. Then I will go, I'll lay out some opening topics because he likes talking some current events at the beginning. So we'll hit on some current stuff. And then I will spend hours and hours and hours digging through the topic of the day. I will go through different resources. I will watch material, whatever it may be. And I will jot notes down. Sometimes I'll write things in full. But, and I was just tweeting about this today, actually, I would say of all the material that I collect for that, maybe 40% of it gets used. My interviewing style for podcasting and in general is entirely based in follow-ups. So I'll have a loose format of where I want to take our conversation, and it helps Matt know and where to jog his memory. But if he says something and I find something about what he said interesting, I'm going to follow up off that. And that will then guide the course of the conversation. I think that's what the best interviews are, when you're going entirely off follow-ups. I never pre-plan questions for any interview that I do. I might have an idea of things I want to talk about, but I will never pre-plan a question, because if you pre-plan a question, you are boxing yourself in and you will miss what they're saying. There's a free piece of advice for anyone who wants to do this. As far as Bischoff goes, Bischoff is much more go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to really play it off the cuff. I will try to do a lot of the legwork in coming up with ideas for what we will talk about, but there's very little pre-production in terms of research and elements, because he really likes to go off the skin of his teeth and say what he's going to say. His show is very difficult to do. Eric Bischoff is a very difficult person to do a podcast with, and I don't mean that as a slight on him. It's certainly not. It's actually a compliment on him, because he's very quick, he's very intelligent, and I need to really be on my best, on my top of my game, and be ready to think on my feet with Eric, because I never know what he's going to throw back my way.
Yeah.
And that is a challenge, but it pushes me as a broadcaster to be better too.
And it makes it so much fun for you as well, because, you know, you're doing this and you want to present a good show. You want to present a good information, facts, but at the same time, if he says something that is not in your notes or that you weren't going with, and then you have to go there, you're I'm sitting up here now. I gotta, I really gotta focus on what he's saying versus, sort of my outline and where I want to go. That's got to be a challenge, like you said, but that's also got to be part of the charm of being able to do stuff with him.
It is. And Eric and I have very different perspectives of modern wrestling too. Very,
I can imagine.
So that can create tension sometimes, but that's good content at the end of the day. But if I'm going to come at him, I need to be convicted,
because he will be convicted.
I've never met someone with more conviction about things than Eric Bischoff. Even if Eric has no idea what he's talking about and he's bullshitting 100% of the way, I've never seen someone speak with more conviction. He could tell me, Jon, the sky is indeed green, and here's why. And he will say it with so much conviction. that I'm like, I want to argue back, but I know if I do, it's just gonna make me look stupid.
I'm rewatching the 96 Nitros and pay-per-views. So this is Eric. Eric's doing a better Vince McMahon than Vince McMahon
Oh
at this
yeah,
point. He is the lead play-by-play, so every single storyline direction is coming directly out of his mouth. He's trying to get over the baby faces. For some reason, he's also trying to get over Lex Luger, who's doing a heel character. He's also being sensitive to people hating on Lex. I'm waiting for the payoff on that one. I'm not exactly sure why it's happening, but he's doing such a good job at promoting, and we talked about this when we were talking AEW, WWE, the difference between WCW and WWF. Like, he's getting these points across. This is what you get with the old, and outdated WWF, and here's what you're getting with the new version. And the new version of WCW is really a lot of old WWF characters sort of reborn
with different shine on them, right?
with different shine. And so I say this because people who know us know that our podcast partners may not be the best of friends, especially on social media. So that I didn't want it to feel like there was an elephant in the room. But last year at All Out, we were talking about how we met there in person for the first time. You guys, the ad-free guys, had a convention at the same hotel that we were staying at. And so I got to see Eric, and this man holds court. This dude is so damn
Yeah,
charming and personable
his
and
presence is remarkable, isn't it?
and likable. I was just amazed at, because there's lots of wrestlers going in and out. Like, John Morrison is hanging out and fist bumping with people, and there's lots of it was really like a cornucopia of like tons of wrestlers that you would remember who were there. Jeff Jarrett was there, and the single biggest star, I would say, to the fans that were there was Bischoff, and that is something, right? Like, here's something that it doesn't really bother me, but I kind of think of it as a major what if. We had this WWF and WCW war going through until WCW gets bought out. And you have Eric Bischoff, who could have been like this, he's not going to be A1 to Vince's A2, but you could have created this storyline where these two heads of these companies are fiercely embattled. And I think they may have even wanted to go that way. But soon, Eric kind of becomes like more of a comedy character. And, Vince probably feeling very powerful at that moment. But it's just mind boggling to me that you had such a great performer who really couldn't be that same performer on WWF TV.
I don't think people recognize Eric for truly. Yeah, people I think look at Eric as, oh, the guy from WCW, and he was the man calling the shots. I genuinely, and this might be a controversial take, I believe the best Eric Bischoff is Eric Bischoff, the TV character.
He's
I think he is
100%.
unbelievable as a TV character. From my indie work, there's no one I've borrowed more from than Eric Bischoff, the TV character, especially even Raw GM Eric Bischoff, because he rolled with everything.
Yes.
He did everything that was asked of him. He showed versatility. He showed range. That smile and the swagger
And the pointing to the dimple and the tilting the head. Yeah.
He was so, you just wanted to sock him across the face. That is the essence of a great pro wrestling character.
And you talk about somebody who took things from his previous training. He had modeled, so he knows how to stand in front of a camera. He knows the angles to show. He was doing the TV stuff from earlier before he became an executive. And so he had multiple talents. And, in the end, he's not going to be seen as the best businessman, but I do think he is so undervalued as an on-screen, on-air talent. Like, I get why he's not currently working in AEW. Like, there's differences in what you want to portray in AEW, but I mean, there is room if you're going to bring back Jeff Jarrett for a role in AEW. There is room for a Bischoff character too. You could have a small old school group there, but not saying that that's something
Is
that
that
they
what
should do.
WWE tried to do in 1998 with the NWA?
Yeah,
Jim
totally.
Cornette and
So bad. They just wanted those guys to
and
fail so
ironically,
poorly.
Jeff Jarrett too.
And you say Jim Cornette. I was convinced in the early stages of AEW, and I had I'm close to Dave, so I would hear things and Dave would hear things and he'd tell them to me. So I had this concept of AEW before anybody really knew what AEW was. I was convinced that Jim Cornette versus the Young Bucks or versus the Elite was a fire program
I think
from day one.
I think a lot of people would have thought the same.
And they worked themselves into a shoot and they ruined the whole thing. Now it may be okay for Cornette's podcasting career because he's got so many topics on top of topics to discuss about that stuff. But man, there is an aspect of AEW where I do wish there was an element, a little bit of more old school pro wrestling storytelling. But to Tony Khan's point, maybe that's what has failed pro wrestling in the past, and you need to constantly move forward. That was just to say, even though Dave and Eric don't really get along and they have their differences of opinions about things that happen, I just wanted to make sure people knew that I thought Bischoff was just fantastic on screen, and I think he still has some value.
It's funny that you bring all that up because I think Eric does respect Dave's knowledge of pro wrestling and Dave's vast historian-esque tome that he has built over time. I think Eric's issues with Dave stem from reporting over the years, and I think there were probably missteps on both entities. I think both entities created issues with one another over the years. And listen, when you're a reporter at that level like Dave is, you are in a public light that is a very difficult place to be, especially in an industry that's real, but that's also not real. It's a weird slope to try to walk. And there were times where I'm sure back in the 90s, it was very beneficial for Eric Bischoff to talk to Dave personally.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And now it's on the other side of things.
And Dave would say the same thing about Vince McMahon. When Vince McMahon needed Dave as a mouthpiece to a specific set of fans,